Um, Welcome everyone to virtual NCPH 2021. I had dearly hoped to be welcoming you to Salt Lake City at this time, but we'll see you here sometime soon. You don't need me to tell you that this past year has been an incredibly stressful and eventful year, framed by a global pandemic, including a national and now international, oops, somebody's breaking in there, racial reckoning, and of course, one of the most divisive elections in American history. Obviously, over the past year, the central factor in that has impacted the board's work and the board's decision has been the COVID pandemic. It began last year, almost precisely today. At least the lockdowns did. And we faced the immediate decision to have to cancel the in-person meeting in Atlanta. And again, special thanks to Marla for her leadership at that time. I want to make sure that's never overlooked. And Stephanie, who has been a rock for us for a long time, but especially this year, along with Megan and Stasha, has done an amazing job. And just want to make sure that those contributions are remembered. The pandemic, of course, led to the decision to cancel the in-person portion of this meeting. I would say that was a much easier decision for us. The pandemic was still ongoing. It was very clear that it was the best decision. It did not have to be made immediately. And in making it, we were able to, I guess, pivot towards a much more robust online offering. And thanks to Lori Arnold and Lisa Carr-Childers, who led the program committee, for their work and their willingness. They actually were ahead of the curve, I think, in planning for this and in anticipating this move long ago. And thanks to Matt Godfrey and Sasha Coles, who led the local arrangements committee, and their work won't go to waste. We will see you all here in a few years, and that work will certainly be the basis of the meeting. Now, we did a lot of other things this year. Again, beyond the meetings, the board's really stayed focused on providing support for our members and ensuring the health of our organization. I would point you towards the last issue of Public History News for a full rundown of board actions. But I mean, I would also emphasize, though, the reallocation of several budget lines to virtual programming. And there's more information on that on the website, as well as a History at Work blog post that Megan and Stasha wrote. So we tried to really be cognizant of the health of our organization, but also the best interests of our membership, who we care about deeply, and a bunch of amazing people. Now, other things that happened this year was, again, a very eventful year. I'm happy to welcome Sarah Case as the new editor of the Public Historian. In the midst of a pandemic, we had to negotiate a new memorandum of understanding with University of California, Santa Barbara, that brought Sarah on board. Sarah brings with her a strong resume as a public historian, as a public history educator, and of course, as the managing editor of the Public Historian for the past 5 years or 6 years, I think it has been. And of course, that means that James Brooks is leaving his role as editor of the Public Historian. And I want to send a special thanks to James for his vision, his hard work over the past 6 years, and wish him the best. And he will stay with us in various capacities. But we're so happy to have Sarah as the new editor of the Public Historian. Now, we also had a new MOA with Rutgers University and the Mid-Atlantic Regional Center for the Humanities, which means that Nicole Bololin will continue in her role as the co-editor of the Public Historian and our digital publications editor. And we are very, very happy to that. Nicole is a great member of our team and does some amazing work. And so we're so happy that these relationships are going to continue. So that's some pretty good news there. I see I'm running over my time already. I have a penchant for doing that. So I'm not going to steal any thunder from Priya and Will. There'll be a very happy announcement that I will leave to the both of them to make. Briefly at the end, again, thanks to the great board of directors, a bunch of dedicated, really hardworking people. Thanks to Stephanie, Megan, and Stasha, who are the most amazing staff, people who really make this thing run. And thanks to our members, the members who serve, literally, I think almost 200 members who serve as committee members for NCPH, but then our membership as a whole that remains so engaged. And that's why we do this. And so I'm going to leave it at that so I don't run over too much, only 1 minute. And I'm going to turn it over to Sharon for the report of the Secretary Treasurer. And Sharon's work, of course, is some of the most important that's done.
Thank you, Greg. Needless to say, Greg is more than correct that it's been kind of a stressful year. And I think probably at this point last year, we could not have imagined really what the end of 2020 financial situation was going to be. We spent a lot of time as a board and in conjunction with the Finance Committee, co-chaired by Amy Wilson and Rose Byler, trying our best to steward the organization through what were very uncertain times. But I can say that we are happy to have made it through 2020 actually with a very small surplus. And the way that has happened has been as a result of many contributing factors. We imagined that we would see a membership drop off and those sorts of things because we know that financial circumstances are difficult for many members and many people in our field, but we've seen sort of an uptick in institutional memberships and patron memberships and those sorts of things. But the real variable for this year and what the budget was going to look like for 2020 and for 2021 was, as Greg suggests, the decisions about the annual meetings. We were incredibly fortunate to not have had to pay enormous amounts of penalties for canceling our in-person meeting in Atlanta. And that really made it possible for us, in addition to the generosity of members in the way that they dealt with their registrations for that meeting, to think creatively about how the rest of the year was going to look. Many thanks to the board who has done their own part with fundraising, and in fact this year outstripped their goal for fundraising for the annual fund. We started to see income from our long-term efforts to increase our sustainability and our independence, including some income managing our cooperative agreement with the National Park Service for the first time. But mostly, the switch of the conferences to these virtual conferences shifted expenses from one line or a handful of lines to a handful of other lines, but dramatically lowered the costs and the expenses of the meeting for the year. And the other thing that I cannot stress enough is the stewardship and the caution of the staff in dealing with administrative costs, as everyone has been working from home. The kinds of savings that went along with things being shut down have made it possible for us to weather this year in a responsible way. And so it is with great good fortune that we have a small surplus, and by small I mean small, 4 digits. Small, but every little bit of that surplus counts, and we will likely shift that surplus into our operational reserve fund, which is really our insurance policy as an organization for this kind of uncertainty and instability. We knew when we had these conversations in March and April about the possibility of having to cancel the in-person meeting, that we had, as a board and as an organization, had some foresight to squirrel away that operational reserve to help us get through that. And additionally, because of the kinds of situations and investments that the federal government has finally decided to make, and initially decided to make, we're really happy to have achieved a chairman's grant from the National Endowment from the Humanities that will help us have a little bit surety and balance for 2021. 2021 is also going to be a year of great fiscal question marks for us. But thanks to the diligent work of the Finance Committee and the board and the staff, and of course, all of the fundraising committees around the various funds, I feel like we're in good hands as an organization, and we can continue to make choices about using our resources in a way that reinforce our commitments to the field and to the mission of public history. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our next speaker.
Sarah, you are up next.
Hi, does this sound okay? Sound good. Okay, thank you. Hi, I'm Sarah Case. As Greg said, as of March 1, I am now editor of the Public Historian, and I wanted to thank Stephanie, Greg, Sharon, and lots of other people as well for dealing with the process of negotiating the MOA with my home institution of UC Santa Barbara. So thank you for that, and for your support. I was managing editor for actually 8 years before, and worked with both James Brooks and Randy Bergstrom. And so I have a great deal of institutional memory of the work of the journal. I wanted to mention a few sort of recent and upcoming special features that the journal has done. In November, we did a roundtable on the emotional labor of interpreting slavery by Black women, and which we've received a lot of feedback and conversation around. And our February issue, which is just launched, is on childhood, consumption, gender, and public history. We're hoping that gets a good deal of readership as well. Looking forward, we are, again, I see a lot of names here of people who have reviewed or written for us, so thank you. And we're always looking for new submissions. We continue to particularly look for interdisciplinary work, international work, work that is co-authored. We're interested in that as well. Work that highlights in reports from the field, real world work of public historians. And we also really encourage people to sign up to be reviewers on our reviewer tab on the journal's website. Other than that, looking forward, again, we have, we're considering special issues in a variety of subjects, but for the next couple of years, but we are really open to having, so again, sort of more broad and interdisciplinary work going forward. So I'm happy to take questions in the question period as well, but I'll keep it short. Thank you.
Nicole.
Thanks, Sarah. So as Greg mentioned, I'm Nicole Bololin. I'm based at Rutgers University Camden in New Jersey, right across the river from Philadelphia. And in my role, I'm the co-editor of the Public Historian and also the digital media editor for NCPH. And at Rutgers, I direct a continuing ed program in historic preservation. One of my main tasks in this role is to help integrate the public historian and history at work. And I'll just say at the top of what I have to say that you're welcome to get in touch anytime if you want to talk about publishing with us with either publication. I wanted to go over a couple highlights to draw your attention to History at Work and the Public Historian. So if you haven't been able to follow on recently, you get a sense of what we've been up to. In addition to what Sarah just went over, we are covering the pandemic in various ways in both publications. So for example, we have a review upcoming in the next issue of Hope Wanted at the New York Historical Society, and also an essay about archival collecting and ethics. And we had another piece in about social media and the pandemic also. History at Work itself has published a lot on COVID-19 so far. We have all of those essays tagged with COVID-19 if you'd like to see the full list. They have ranged in topics from how to manage a remote internship to issues in searching for jobs during difficult times like this one. We also have a call out that's on a rolling basis for both publications about commemoration broadly defined. And that is laid out on both the journal website and on the blog website. We're particularly interested in what we call reports from the field from the journal standpoint, but of course welcome all types of essays. On the blog, we've also been doing more work recently, trying to highlight perspectives related to Black history, anti-racism, and social justice. And this is being led in particular by our digital media chair, Adina Langer. So you've probably seen some of those pieces already, and we have a lot that are coming out over the coming months and weeks also. A couple months ago now, we welcomed a few new affiliate editors, Jessica Mack, Nick Sacco, and John Legg, all at the Public Historian. And you can find a list of everybody, all at, for History at Work. Sorry, I misspoke there. You can find a list of all of our editors on our website. And we also have many editors who have been with us for a long time, and they are retiring, so to speak, and it will be sort of awful to see them go, but we're very grateful for all of the work they've put into making History at Work super successful. Because of that, and because we have had a lot of pitches come through over the past year, we are going to be looking for additional volunteer editors in the coming months. If that's something that you're interested in, we'd love to hear from you. Also, because of that, we are pausing review of pitches for History at Work at least through April, so that we can catch up with the material that we're already working on, and so that we can prepare accordingly to bring on new editors to assist with the blog. But you're still welcome to send emails in the meantime if you want to sort of have a pre-pitch conversation. Finally, I'm also working on a 40th anniversary e-publication with Marianne Babel that was delayed. It was supposed to come out last year, but it will come out sometime this year, and we're moving toward the copy editing stage of that now. It will be a collection of reflections on a variety of topics. And finally, if you are interested in learning more about the History at Work process from the writing perspective and also the editorial perspective, I'd love to see you at From Pitch to Post, which will be on March 19th from 1:30 to 3. That will be with Adina Langer, the digital media chair, and me. And Sarah and I will be at the Meet the Public Historian Editors event on March 19th from 3 to 3:30. That is all I have to say. Happy to take questions now or later. And of course, you can always be in touch via email.
Thank you, Nicole. So I am pleased to report that we have over 800 people registered for the conference at this point, with another about 200 people signed up for at least one of our 4 public events that are happening in conjunction with the conference. And we expect that number to continue to grow as registration will remain open throughout the 3 weeks of the conference. And then we also anticipate creating a kind of post-conference rate for people who want to catch up with the pre-recorded content or sessions that have been recorded and can be posted at a later date. So this conference has been a massive undertaking. In a lot of ways, we have discovered that virtual meetings are far more difficult for our staff than in-person ones. So I want to thank Megan, Stasia, and our graduate intern from IUPUI, Hannah Smith, who hire her if she sends you her resume. They are a fantastic team. They have managed an incredibly chaotic planning cycle so well, considering how many difficulties we're facing, how many uncertainties, and how many things that we are doing that we have never done before. So they are a really great team. I also want to thank the folks at Hutchinson Design who have come on as a support team for our small staff during the meeting. They came recommended to us by the Association of African American Museums that use them for conference planning, and we would surely all be on the floor sleeping if it were not for that team. So thank you to them. And thank you to our program committee and our would-be local arrangements committee. These folks were given the absolutely impossible task of planning for every eventuality of what this meeting could or should look like, and they managed that with grace and creativity. Liesl, Lori, and their team have created a slate of sessions, workshops, and working groups that is just as strong and just as large as our typical in-person meeting, which is no easy feat. When we finished loading the last of the sessions, I saw that we have 106 sessions, workshops, and events that are happening over the course of these 3 weeks, and they are all relevant and interesting and inspiring, and I'm so excited that we all have the chance to explore those over the next few weeks. As soon as this conference wraps, we'll start planning in earnest for next year, as always. We are still hopeful that we may be able to achieve an in-person meeting in 2022 in Montreal. We are really excited that outgoing board member Kimberly Sprinkle, who's the director of the Charles Sumner Museum and Archives in Washington, D.C., and Jean-Pierre Morin from Crown and Indigenous Affairs Canada will be our co-chairs for the program committee, and we are so excited to see what they are dreaming up for us to talk about and dig into next year. The theme and the call for proposals will be coming soon, but one thing at a time. We'll enjoy this meeting first. And we anticipate the same plan of releasing that information in April and May and accepting proposals through July of this year. I am also pleased to report that membership numbers are strong, especially considering the uncertain times that we find ourselves in. We are still at just over 1,600 members, so we have essentially been stable since spring of 2020, which is a better scenario than I think any of us could have expected. We are seeing, as Sharon mentioned in her report, increasing numbers of patron and partner level supporters that are both organizations and departments, but also individuals. And we're also seeing a really big increase in our number of sustaining members, which means a great deal to the organization financially in terms of providing stability for us moving forward, but is also, especially for me and the rest of the staff and the board, just a really wonderful vote of confidence to know that our members have that kind of faith in us. And really especially wonderful considering that membership renewal processes were moved online intermittently between last spring and now, as staff have been adjusting to working from home and less access to the campus and more infrequent mail delivery. So thank you all for bearing with us through all of those changes. It's been crucially important each year that NCPH has the help of so many public history programs, companies, presses, and other institutions who support us as patron and partner members, and as sponsors and exhibitors. And especially this year, when this is all still somewhat experimental for us in a virtual format. So I do encourage you to visit the exhibitors hall and sponsors lobby throughout the program. Chat with those folks about their services, about their books. Many of them are offering swag and raffles and trying to make the most of this virtual environment. So please visit them, chat them up, and thank them for being involved in this virtual conference. As Sharon also mentioned, we've begun in the past year to operationalize our cooperative agreement with the National Park Service. In the first year of that operationalization, we took on 3 task agreements, a historic resource study, an update of the World War II Homefront theme study, and a series of scholarly roundtables related to the upcoming 250th anniversary of the American Revolution. The first of those roundtables will be hosted by Lori Arnold next Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern, and it will focus on Indigenous histories and memories. So please don't miss that. And that is one of our 4 public events. There is a link on the conference page on the website so that if you have colleagues or friends who are interested in that event but are not interested in or able to register for the full conference, they can participate in that for free. And we are very excited about that. We look forward to taking on more projects in the coming year. We're talking about several more projects related to the World War II Homefront that will be part of sort of a suite of things that we may be taking on. And we're really excited about deepening this relationship over the next several years. Personally, I know I am enjoying the renewed connection to actual scholarship and practicing public history in the field, which has really been absolutely wonderful. And as Sharon mentioned, the income that the agreement provides is really important as we continue to grow and try to achieve more financial stability and independence. And then we're also really excited to have received an NEH Chairman's Grant this spring. That grant is providing $30,000 to help fund 2 of our staff positions from January to June this year. It has certainly gone far in helping us achieve the robust virtual meeting that you're seeing this month. And then we will build later in the spring on the virtual program pivot that we did last fall that Greg mentioned. So there will be more to come in the future, and we are really very, very thankful to the NEH for supporting our organization in that way. And finally, we are also preparing for our future with the endowment campaign. So I will now turn it over to Priya and Will.
Sure. Hi, I'm Priya Chaya. In my day job, I'm the Associate Director for Content at the National Trust for Historic Preservation, but I'm also one of the co-chairs for the 2020 Vision Endowment Campaign.
And I'm Will Stoudemeyer. I am Assistant Professor of History and Coordinator of our Public History programs at the University of Nebraska at Kearney, and have been working with Priya for 3-4 years now on this campaign. And so we're really thrilled to be here with you all and to be able to announce some good news in the midst of everything else. So as many of you know, and I see many names of people that I've written thank you cards to, as many of you know, we've been working for the last several years to build up the NCPH Endowment Fund with the ultimate goal of growing that endowment to at least $1 million, which is a pretty lofty objective. Our original goal was to accomplish this by the Atlanta meeting in 2020. We called it our 2020 Vision Campaign, but as you all know, COVID and other things had other plans in mind for us. And so we weren't able to do that. And of course, the market dip last year made things a challenge as well. And yet, despite all of that, we're here a year later to be able to say that we've done it and that our endowment is now not just at $1 million, but over $1 million, thanks to the contributions of our members and others. And we're super thrilled to be able to announce that. We've had over $130,000 in donations in the form of pledges and one-time gifts from about 400 different people and benefited as well from a good upswing in the market in the last few months here too. And for Priya and I and for the development committee at large, I think this gives us a lot of hope for the future of NCPH being quite bright, despite all of the challenges that we've been going through and the difficulties of the past year.
So what exactly does this mean? As Will mentioned, over the last couple of years, we've worked really hard to share with you why the endowment is important and why it matters. It funds the initiatives related to DEIA, the awards, mini-cons back when we could meet in person and will again. But really seriously, by donating to the campaign, you've supported the role the endowment plays in providing connections, supporting and cultivating the work of new and emerging professionals, and building community through networking events. These funds also invest in the future of our organization by investing in the capacity of the work that Stephanie and her team does. So helping them bring on new people if they need, and especially as we continue to grow over time. And so to get here, Will and I produced a series of blog posts outlining a few of these reasons on History at Work. So if you still are wondering a little bit more about what the endowment means, they're still there, still on the website. If you just search how we grow, you'll hear not only from us, but from a number of different members that contributed their time to sharing why the endowment has helped them in their work. We also held 2 events for membership. One, oh man, many years ago at the National Trust, where we heard from now the Chief Legal Officer of the National Trust talk about why old places matter. And then one just a couple of weeks ago with Nicole Moore, who I see, and B. Aaron Cole talking about the future of the program in 2021. And what does it mean to be a public historian after the year that we have had? Both were obviously intended to support the community and think about our work. But as Will mentioned, between us and the other co-chairs, we wrote a lot of thank you notes. My favorite part was going to the post office and picking up the stamps I got to share with you. If you follow me on social media, I tried to share them so you knew if you were getting a frog or gardens or dragons. It's a little silly, but it was a lot of fun. And then I also found out last month, actually, that someone I usually only saw at the conference lived blocks away from me. So I thought that was a hilarious thing that happened through thank you notes. But seriously, we really appreciate everyone who is able to give. You don't know how much it means to us and how much it means to the organization.
Yeah, and we just really want to emphasize how awesome this achievement is and how much this moment is a moment of celebration for our organization after years of campaigning on the part of the development committee and Priya and myself and others. As we thought about this, we kept coming back to the notion that endowments are about the future. Endowments are about thinking about the future health of our organization. And to hit that goal in the middle of a pandemic, in the middle of everything else we're going through right now, is, I think, particularly notable, because this is going to help build the capacity of NCPH long term, and as Priya said, support the various programs that we all really care about, help our field tackle the challenges that it needs to tackle as we move into hopefully post-COVID times and the not too distant future. And in the words of one of our esteemed leaders on the development committee, Bill Bryans, we also hope this builds a culture of philanthropy, or helps to build a greater culture of philanthropy within the organization, of giving back to NCPH and supporting the organization for all that it does for us as members. And so we're going to wrap up just with a few particular thank yous. So we wanted to thank Bill Bryans and Dee Harris for their work on this campaign, as well as co-chairs of the development committee, and for bringing Priya and I on board. Dee and Amy Wilson for helping to secure our largest donor to the endowment campaign. Jim Gardner for helping to lead the major gifts portion of the campaign. Priya and I oversaw the membership gifts, the minor gifts. Jim was in charge of the major gifts component. We thank him for that. And of course, the entire development committee who advised us, supported us, helped us put together programs and ideas to promote this campaign over the last several years. And then last but not least, of course, all of the membership and others who gave generously, either as a one-time gift or as a pledge to this endowment. We thank you all.
Buying water bottles.
Yeah, or buying water bottles.
But thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Priya and Will. And thank you, Marla, for modeling your NCPH water bottle. Maybe next time we can all be together again, we'll have to come up with some fun new swag for the future. Thank you, everybody, for your reports. We're happy to open it up for questions at this point. Feel free to unmute yourself, turn your video on if you want to ask your question live, or type them into either the public session chat in FeedLoop or the chat if you're here directly in Zoom. We know that was a lot of information to take in, and it's been a big year. I see a question from Julie Peterson. Can we still contribute to the endowment even though the campaign is over? And yes, absolutely. I see Sharon's big smile there. Yes, we are absolutely still accepting donations to the endowment. The endowment as Priya and Will mentioned, supports sort of the long-term goals of the organization. It funds all of our awards in our awards program. It funds DEI efforts at the annual meeting and beyond the annual meeting, and also some of our staff salaries. And then we also have an annual fund every year that allows us some flexibility to take on opportunities that maybe we weren't able to build into the budget a year ahead of time. So I'm sure someone will pop a link to the donation page in the chat so you can make your way over there. Yes, and as Lacey points out, you will get a really sweet card in the mail if you donate. Thank you, Priya, for typing that into the chat. Other questions? Anything anyone on the board wanted to add that we forgot to cover from our really intense last year since we all reported? Oh, I see another question. Have there been any lessons from the past year's crash course in going digital that may serve the organization well in the future? That is a very good question. Yes, and anyone else from the board, feel free to jump in if you have anything to add. But I know the staff learned a lot from our first attempts at virtual programming that we did last fall. We didn't call it this, but it was sort of like a pivot of the mini-con model to virtual programs. Stasia Tanzer, our membership manager, wrote a really good piece for History at Work and for the latest issue of the newsletter on some of the lessons she learned as the staff person who took charge of that effort. I think we learned that it is actually something we can do when we follow this kind of model of those programs, the content being driven by our members. And, we're still kind of figuring out what that might look like down the road. We felt in those programs that it was really important to build a model where our presenters were compensated for their planning and presentation time in that work. When we were able to do that by using money from the endowment that would have been spent on the 2020 annual meeting. So we do still have some work to do on figuring out financial models to add that work into the budget moving forward. And we have learned a lot about virtual conferences. Last year when we did this, we had 10 days to make the pivot, and it was a very sort of loose, organic experience. And we thank you all for going on that wacky journey with us as the world sort of fell apart around our attempt at a virtual meeting. And we learned that the way our members interact with virtual conferences while working from home is now we see so obviously very different than an in-person conference, which is why we've gone this route this year of spreading the content out over 3 weeks. We'll see at the end from a staff perspective whether that is sustainable or not. And we're talking now without having come to any decisions or clarity yet about what we might need to be thinking about in terms of the future of the annual meeting. We know that there is no way to replace the kind of idea exchange and connection that we have when we're able to be in the same physical space, but we also see the how much more accessible virtual options are. So we will still be sort of exploring what we might be able to do with our capacity moving forward to take the best advantage of both of those options. Anything anyone wants to add to that from the? And I see Marianne's question.
Marianne asked about that, which is exactly what you just addressed, about any elements of virtual participation going forward beyond COVID. I would point out that the board did vote to suspend, at least for the time being, the requirement for in-person participation. So there is that possibility, I would say, in the future. I also know that it is a lot of it's the more complicated way to go when you talk about a hybrid conference, online and in person. So
Yeah, I don't know that we will have the capacity to do a hybrid conference in the truest form of hybrid, where everyone is participating in the same time frame, whether they're virtual or in person. But because I think we just don't have the budget or the personnel capacity to make that happen. But I think there are other solutions out there, and we are watching what other folks are starting to do, even for this coming fall, and trying to find some inspiration from the models we're seeing from our related organizations. And I see Vanessa's question in Feed Loop about a decision for 2022. We don't have a decision yet. We will begin to approach our host hotel in Montreal as soon as this meeting is over, because part of the decision will be based on, you know, what, how willing they are to give us room to move in the contract sort of determines part of, you know, the financial side of what we're able to do. So there will be lots more discussions, and I'm sure more History at Work posts and newsletter updates to come as we settle into that plan. The complicating factor, of course, with Montreal is the border travel. So we'll have to sort of see how that is going. Sharon, do you have a?
Yeah, I just wanted to, it occurred to me when you asked sort of if there were other things that we wanted to add to all of these questions. I think it may not necessarily be clear to the membership that the board for the organization meets monthly, spends an intensive amount of time, you know, trying to work really hard on these questions together, and that's a little bit unlike the kinds of work that boards in other organizations do. It's not that, you know, you meet every 6 months or in the fall and in the spring and in those sorts of things. And so in that sense, it gives us, those kinds of meetings give us a lot of time to work through the complexity of these issues and try to be as careful as we possibly can about serving the needs of the members and doing the right thing financially and for everyone's health and safety and those kinds of things. That's all.
Yeah, and this organization is incredibly lucky to have the board that we have, that are incredibly thoughtful in approaching these questions. Yes, and to Serge's comment, I think that, you know, we have proven to ourselves this year that we can do virtual programming, and that there is so much to be gained, especially for bringing in our international colleagues and our colleagues who have more precarious employment situations, or, you know, graduate students that aren't able to travel to an in-person meeting. So I do hope that there are pieces of what we've learned over the past year that we are able to carry forward into the future. But yeah, probably not a full hybrid.
but I'd also like to say to Serge and all of our international members that there's a number of people on here who are looking very much forward to going to Berlin, and that's going to happen in 2022. We've got our fingers crossed that it's not going to happen this year again, but in 2022, we hope to see a lot of folks in Berlin for IFPH.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you, RJ, for your kind comments. We are very lucky to have a thoughtful team. I'm glad that we did not have to spend the week before this conference in daily board meetings. So.
Also hoping that our legal fees will be less this year. For related reasons.
Yeah. But it's been incredible to feel, especially as a staff of just 3 full-time folks. And Stasia was a month into her position as membership manager when the pandemic got underway. And I think all 3 of us are incredibly grateful for the real involvement and dedication of the board in being so thoughtful about the finances, but also about the ethical implications of how and when we meet and ask our members to participate with us. So thank you. Well, if there are no more questions, I don't want to keep anyone longer than we need to, but we are all accessible through the Feedloop platform. Board members have a tag on their profile in the networking tab. So if you have questions for board members, you can find us, you can talk with us. We are accessible and here, and I hope that you really enjoy the program that we've put together over the next few weeks. And I hope that next year we're able to see you in person. So, well, thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.